American Water Polo.
Hi, this is Damon Newman from American Water Polo, and we're here today with Max Schlegel of Johns Hopkins University to better understand the college recruiting process. How you doing, Max?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit more about Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Maryland, East Coast water polo player, and actually played in American water polo leagues growing up as well, like in Villanova and everything.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
Played under Mike Schofield here in Annapolis, Maryland, and had a chance to go play D1 at Loyola Marymount for, 4 seasons, 5 years. Won 4 conference championships in a row while we were there, so that was pretty awesome. Came back, started coaching water polo locally at Calvert Hall. It's a Baltimore high school, and moved up the chain to Johns Hopkins, and this would be, I think, my 5th or 6th season at Hopkins, second as head coach. As far as the school's concerned, one of the best research for medical schools in the country. I think it was their public health degree was ranked #1 in the country. 6,000 undergrads, but we also do economics, engineering, bioengineering, but you can also just be a history major or English major. So it's just like any other school, but top tier, definitely up there with the Ivy Leagues as far as hard to get into, and what you're getting out of it is top in the country for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, Johns Hopkins, academic reputation, far exceeds itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what can athletes do to get recruited?
Yeah, so I mean, for the most part, just playing as much water polo as possible. I know some guys are emailing me and they're saying, "Hey, it's in the middle of October. I'm in this tournament. I'm on this tournament." Well, we're as coaches, we're all going on all our games and tournaments as well. I don't have a full-time assistant, so there's no one I can send to these games. So if you're only playing in your fall season, you're going to have to rely on video. But if you're joining, even if it's a small club team and you're playing the off season, it's going to help a lot more of the smaller coaches and smaller programs like myself to see you, just because we don't have the resources to see you during that traditional fall season on the East Coast. I know Florida is a little bit different, but playing as much water polo as you possibly can in the spring and in the summer to give coaches the most opportunity to come and see you play is a big help, since, like we said, fall season for men's water polo is, we're traveling every weekend. And I know it's harder on the East Coast. Some of the West Coast kids can, coach can play in a game on Thursday and drive to Saturday, but
Right.
not in our schedule does that allow it to happen.
So when your athletes, they're trying to get recruited, what's a good way for them to maybe promote themselves?
Yeah, reach out and also talk to your high school coach. We've discussed in the past how small the water polo world is, and you'd be amazed at how many connections your high school coach may have. And if you talk to them, they may put you in the right direction. And then just email coaches. I'm never mad at people emailing me at any time of day. I'll respond to some, others I won't respond for different factors. But there's nothing, it's not going to hurt to email a coach and say, here's, what I like about your school. Here's what I've done so far, ask questions, anything like that, just email. And then also I would say, I haven't been to a website for the water polo team that doesn't have a recruiting questionnaire.
Hmm.
And so log on to the websites, your schools you're interested in, see if they have a questionnaire and fill it out. And then also update it. I know I've had kids fill it out when they're sophomores, and then when it comes time to me trying to figure everything out, they haven't updated anything. And, I'm not going to reach out to every single one of those guys to see, oh, well, they didn't have test scores on there as a sophomore. Do they have it now? That's one extra step. If I have 100 guys, that's going to be the last thing I look for, to go back in time and see if they've filled that out, or just, if they don't have it, I'll skip to the next guy. So make sure you go on those recruiting questionnaires and then update it as you get more information.
Okay, great. That's good information to know. Yeah, take advantage of those resources and stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about some sophomores they're obviously in recruiting databases that coaches have. Um, when's a good time to start the process? So if the PSA is watching this, and what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, in sophomore year, I would cast a big net, right? Start looking at schools that interest you, have the programs that interest you as far as like school programs. See maybe realistically where you might be able to play. But as far as sophomores, for me, it's good to have them like a name and be on a list of like, okay, well, I'm going to this program to watch this junior that I'm recruiting currently now, but there's also a sophomore on the team that I know is giving me my name. Now, I'm not going to go up to that player while they're playing and talk to them like I might do at the end of the day for the junior, but at least I can see and watch them. So like I said, if you can fill out that questionnaire as a sophomore, you may not get, a lot of information from the coach, or if you're emailing the coach, you may not be like, oh yeah, let's start this process. But I think reaching out to different programs and just getting your name out there is good for sophomore year, but don't be sad or worried if the coach isn't contacting you back like that young. But just having your name out there is a good idea for sophomore year.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a good opportunity there. So, you played for, Coach Schofield on the club side. You went to LMU for 4 years and 4 or 5, and then you played for John,
Yep.
John Lochran there, and now coaching. What are some of the characteristic traits that you think coaches are looking for, in a PSA?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is, having the ability to learn. And you can get that from a kid talking to them, watching them play with their coach. Like if their coach is telling them something or trying to teach them a skill, are they looking in the coach's eye and listening and trying to do it? So the willingness to learn, but then also, a sense of confidence when you're getting in the pool or in the academic world, like having the confidence to know that you're going to do the best you can and perform well without coming off as know-it-all and cocky, right? Putting those two things together is like, I'm willing to learn, but once I learn it, I'm going to do it really well. And then being self-motivated, obviously for a lot of these programs, I mean, including mine, we don't have a lot of time dedicated in the pool like in the off season, right? So I want someone who's self-motivated, who wants to win that Division III national title, who, when season ends in the fall, they're going to hop in the pool as soon as they get back and maintain swimming, doing A-beater that, we're not doing mandatory practices. But then that also translates into the classroom. We're not – coaches want to help as much as possible, but we're not parents. We're not going to be on you day in, day out, so you really have to be self-motivated as well.
Okay, great. So as the athlete moves through the process, that they cast that wide net that you talked about, they're making their decisions, they're narrowing down, they're reaching out to some coaches. How would you recommend an athlete prepare for a phone conversation that they're going to have with a potential coach?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for when I talk to them, obviously I'm going to give them my spiel why I think Hopkins is the best fit, or another coach thinks their school's the best fit. But I want to know from them why we've made that, smaller cut down group. Like, what is it about the school? What is it about the program that draws you in? And hearing, they may not know what degree they want necessarily, but maybe know that, if you're going for a D3, that school's the most important part, and then you're playing water polo on top of that, or knowing the standards of each program, and then just have questions. Ask questions of what is important to you. So many times guys don't really have any questions, and then for me that just means, okay, we're just one name in a group, whereas you might ask a question about practice times and knowing when they are, and that might help me determine, okay, he asked this question, so he wants to know how he can coordinate his day around practice, like what he's going to have time for, thinking into that process. Whereas like Hopkins, we practice once a day. We're not 2 a day. Like you have time to do, other things. A lot of guys are in fraternities. So, I mean, if you're in engineering, there's engineering clubs. So having other interests and knowing if you're allowed to do that, and just having questions that interest you, so I know that you're motivated and you're not just going through the motions.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So obviously, you and I are talking here on the computer. COVID-19 outbreak, is happening
Sure.
worldwide, and there's a potential for losses of some big tournaments, some postponements. What should a PSA be doing right now to be seen or getting their name out there?
Yeah, so obviously it is difficult with not many tournaments going on or none going on right now. I would say for me, hopefully you had an opportunity to play in the fall and someone recorded something and you have game films. I love seeing game films just because of the lack of my ability to see people play. I do rely heavily on JOs to see people in person, but I'll also do like the Northeast Zone qualifiers where, I can see 8 or 9 teams go to that. But obviously in this time we can't do that. So I'm going to rely more on you contacting me and then talking to your coaches, right? So where I may be able to watch you play for myself, now I'm going to your coach and saying, okay, really realistically, what are this player's skills? What do they do well? What do they need work on? So really being in contact with your coach and saying, like, that coach, he or she knows you from the past. They know what you're able to do. They've seen you compete, and they can give me a realistic picture of what that looks like, even though I wasn't able to see it firsthand. The other thing is for D3, we are allowed to Zoom recruits now. So we may not be able to meet in person. We can certainly have a FaceTime or a meeting or anything like that. So, you feel comfortable as close to meeting a coach and seeing their personality as possible. So,
yeah.
All those things are available. And again, it is just more relying on, talking to those coaches.
Yeah, so you talk. Give me a little bit more info. Like, so these high school, how come these high school and club coaches, how do they play a role in helping getting athletes noticed? Is that something where, you or other coaches have a network of people that they know? Obviously, we talked a little about water polo being a small world.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely there's networks that we know, and then also being a prestigious school like Johns Hopkins, I also kind of know sometimes what schools have given Hopkins players. Like I know Menlo is a big feeder school for us, and that's just a fact. We've had tons of them roll through because they have the standards, and so I know that coach in California pretty well because I'm constantly talking to those players. But even like a Pennsylvania team, I know the Episcopal coach and I played at the same time. We've had conversations, but yeah. So those coaches, as long as, I trust most coaches on the East Coast, and maybe even if it's not your specific coach, but it's someone who's seen you play or who's in the programs, and I can talk to somebody. I know a lot of kids reference more than just their high school coach. They're putting 2 or 3 references on there. And those coaches just being as honest as possible to me and being realistic. The coaches have either played or coached enough to see if a kid really has potential and being honest, not only with me, but maybe with that player, saying, this is a good fit for you, or you should look at this school because of, your playing ability, your speed or whatever. Be honest with the player and then be honest with myself. I know there's definitely categories for me where, coach calls me and says, hey, this guy isn't going to come to your program and be an immediate starter, but he's got great potential. He just needs to be in the pool more and doesn't have the accessibility. Well, I still want that kid. Like, he has potential, and I put him in the future category, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to recruit him or not want him on the team. So just that honesty and telling myself and the kid like realistic expectations and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. So Can you give me like a common misconception that you've seen just about the recruiting process in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here on the East Coast is so many of these lacrosse friends are like committed sophomore year, or they're getting schools all over the place trying to get them on their team so early. And for me, I think for the most part, I don't start heavily recruiting a player until spring of their junior year. So I think a lot of kids can get frustrated when they're seeing that, or big football stars getting, recruited as a sophomore and they're committed. Well, they're actually really not committed. They're just saying they want to go there. There's no written paperwork. So I think that's a big issue with people just verbally committing, and then their friends are like, well, why am I not being looked at like this as a sophomore? Why don't I have verbal commitments anywhere? I think that's just not realistic in the water polo world that we live in, and kids mature at a different age as well, so that doing it that early is kind of unrealistic. Like I said, you should be casting a wide net sophomore year, getting your name out there, but don't expect every college to be just running at you, trying to get you to verbally commit like maybe some of your lacrosse friends or basketball or football friends.
Okay. Yeah, so water polo in itself is unique in that, the recruiting process is a little different.
Yeah.
And based on, the resources that, university might have, whether it's the number of staff members, whether
Right.
the coach is coach is one gender or two, or
Right.
a lot of different factors go into
Absolutely.
the
Yep.
recruiting timeline.
Yeah, I mean, it is very common for there to be one coach for both seasons, and then that even complicates it further. I know for other sports at my school, they have 2, 3, 4 assistant coaches that they can put everywhere. Where I'm one guy recruiting, and maybe I'll hand a couple to a part-time assistant coach to maybe have a phone call with. But other than that, there's not a lot of resources for every school in the country for water polo for that. And it is a smaller sport too. So, there's less tournaments, there's less things to go to. So just not being worried about committing super early like some other kids may be. It may not even be till the summer before your senior year that you're even, getting contacted and a school is putting you on their list. So.
Okay, cool. That's good information to know. Definitely, Max.
Yeah.
One final thing, if an athlete's sitting and reviewing this video and they're interested in playing water polo beyond high school, what should the next step be for them?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, even if you're not a sophomore, but you're a junior, I'm obviously, if you're a senior at this point, you've already selected schools, but juniors and sophomores this year, just start reaching out, filling out those questionnaires. We all have our emails on our websites as well, so fill it out and then send an email and say, hey, coach, like I'm really interested in this school for this and this reasons. I just wanted to let you know I filled out your questionnaire and I'm looking forward to hearing from you and putting your name out there. Obviously, this year is a little bit different too, where a lot of test scores may or may not be updated. Kids haven't taken it yet. I wouldn't panic with that. I mean, every school knows that this is going on, that you could have been studying for months for this March test and then you didn't get to take it. So, I wouldn't worry about that. But if you have it, and put your test scores and transcripts and showcase yourself academically, not only in water polo too. So I know that's huge for where I am. I mean, academics really comes first for us, and then I see how good of a player you are. So.
Right. Well, that has been some great information, Max, and Max Schlegel from Johns Hopkins University. Just giving us some more information about the college recruiting process. This is Damon Newman from American Water Polo. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and our website, AmericanWaterPolo.org. And remember, it's important to stay connected to what's important to you. Hey, thanks again, Max.
Thank you for having me.
All right.